The door was still swinging when I came back inside. Her perfume was gone already. The TV flickered in the dark living room, casting blue light over the empty couch. On the screen, a paused weather report warned about a thunderstorm moving in from the west. Her phone was still on the kitchen counter. Mine was buzzing in my pocket. I didn't look. I could hear the ice machine rattling in the freezer. That was the only sound in the whole house. 2 glasses sat on the table. One half full of whiskey, one untouched. A note was stuck under the untouched glass. It wasn't folded. It wasn't even signed. Don't wait up. The words looked like she'd written them in a rush. The ink bled slightly where the pen had pressed too hard. Upstairs, the closet door hung open. Her suitcase was gone. The clothes on the hangers were mismatched, crooked, like she'd yanked things out without thinking. A drawer was left open. Empty. The house felt like it had been robbed, but only of the things that mattered. I didn't sit down. I didn't cry. I didn't even finish the whiskey. I went to the garage, dragged out the old cardboard boxes we'd labeled Christmas and donations, dumped them out on the concrete floor, and started packing. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I wasn't going to be here when she came back. By midnight, the storm had rolled in. Rain hammered the windows. Lightning strobed across the kitchen as I carried the last box out to the car. Her note was still on the table, the ink starting to run from a drop of rain that had blown in through the open door. She said, "Don't wait up." I didn't. I left. And that's when my phone buzzed again. One more message from an unknown number, glowing through the dark. "She isn't coming back. Not tonight. Not ever. You need to see this." I stared at the message for a full minute, the screen's glow painting my face like some kind of accusation. My thumb hovered over the screen, unsure whether to block the number, call it, or just throw the whole phone into the storm outside. The message sat there, pulsing. "You need to see this." See what? I hadn't told anyone I left. I hadn't posted anything. Lacey and I didn't even have mutual friends anymore. Not really. She'd replaced real people with carefully curated yoga friends, and that one coworker she called her work husband, like it was a joke. It never felt like a joke to me. I locked the car doors. Not sure why. Reflex, maybe. The rain on the windshield looked like static. The phone buzzed again. Image attachment. Taken 15 minutes ago. I tapped it. My get twisted before the picture even loaded. It was her. Lacey. She was in the bar downtown, the Monarch. I recognized the weird metal sculpture behind her shoulder. She was sitting in a red booth with her hands wrapped around a tall glass of something blue. Her dress was the same one from earlier that night. Low cut. Sleek. The kind of dress that tells a different story than working late. And she wasn't alone. The man beside her was leaning in close. Hand on her knee. Smirking like he'd just told her something filthy. Her head was tilted back in a laugh. Not the fake laugh she used at dinner parties, but the one she used to have with me. The picture was clear. Too clear. Whoever sent this wasn't just spying. They were sitting in the bar, watching her. Close. I looked around the car like someone might be out there, watching me too. I felt exposed, even though I was parked in a random church parking lot 3 miles away from our house. My breath fogged up the window. I wiped it away with my sleeve and muttered, "What the hell is this?" I typed back, "Who are you? Why are you sending me this?" 3 dots appeared. Then nothing. Then more dots. Then finally, "Let's just say I owe you. She's not who you think she is. Check the guest registry at the Sableton Hotel. Room 816. Sableton was a boutique hotel 2 blocks from the Monarch. Upscale. Modern. Not the kind of place you accidentally check into. She and I had passed it 100 times. She once said, "That's where people go to cheat and not get caught." I remember laughing back then. Now it felt like a confession. I should have gone home, or whatever home was now. But I didn't. I drove to the Sableton. The storm was thinning, just drizzle now, but the city lights smeared across my windshield like a bad dream. I walked into the lobby with my hood up, heart slamming. A man in a gray suit stood behind the desk, politely robotic. I pretended to scroll on my phone while watching the guest book screen reflected in the marble counter. And there it was. Lacey R., room 816. Check-in time, 7:42 p.m. 1 guest. Only it wasn't one. Because the man from the photo? He had checked in too. Different name. Same timestamp. Same floor. Same ending, probably. I walked out without saying a word. Got in the car. I didn't even cry. I couldn't. Something colder had moved in. Something heavier than sadness. Something sharp. Back in the driver's seat, I unlocked my phone again. The stranger had sent another message. Want to know how long it's been going on? I didn't answer. I just waited. 7 months. She calls you plan B. And tomorrow, she's going to lie about tonight like she always does. Unless you do something. I sat there in the dark, clutching the steering wheel. That last part kept echoing. Unless you do something. And in that moment, I knew I was done waiting for her. I wasn't going to be her backup plan anymore. But what I didn't know was that Lacey wasn't just cheating. She was hiding something much worse. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the driver's seat of my old Honda, parked on the side of some forgotten road behind the abandoned rail station, the kind of place where no one asks questions if your car is still there at sunrise. My eyes burned from staring at my phone screen too long, reading and rereading every message from the stranger who claimed to know more about my wife than I ever had. 7 months. 7 entire months. That meant birthdays, holidays, our anniversary. While I was busy buying her thoughtful gifts and booking overpriced dinners, she conveniently forgot. She was already somewhere else. With him. Laughing. Lying. Using my name to cover her tracks. But it was the last message that haunted me the most. She's hiding something worse. It played in my head like a whisper at the back of every thought. Worse than cheating? What could that even mean? I didn't want to ask, but of course I did. I typed it quickly, hands shaking more than I'd admit. What do you mean worse? The typing bubble appeared, disappeared, reappeared, then it stopped. No answer. Just dead silence. I waited. 15 minutes passed. Then 30. My phone battery dipped below 20%. Still nothing. I tried calling the number, but it rang twice before cutting to voicemail. No greeting, no name. It felt like someone had pulled a fire alarm in my brain and left me standing in the smoke. I didn't know what to believe. Maybe it was someone messing with me. Maybe it was real. But one thing was certain. This wasn't just infidelity anymore. At 5:13 a.m., I drove back to our neighborhood. The lights were still off in our house. Her car was back in the driveway, so she'd come home after all. I parked around the corner and just sat there for a while, engine off, watching the windows like a coward. At 5:41, the bedroom light turned on. A shadow moved behind the blinds. A figure, hers, pulled them slightly open and peeked out toward the street. Not down the road. Not casually. She looked toward my car, the exact spot where I usually parked. Like she expected me. And when she didn't see it, she smiled. I saw it. Even from this far, I saw her smile. I started shaking. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was something colder. She was relieved that I wasn't there. That I hadn't waited. That I was gone. And that's when I remembered something else. Something small. Insignificant on its own. 2 weeks ago, she made a weird comment when we were watching TV. Some crime documentary about people who vanished and were never found. She said, "If I ever disappeared, would you even know what to tell the cops?" I laughed, shrugged it off, said something stupid like, "I don't even know your blood type." She smirked, didn't say anything after that. Now, sitting there in the cold light of morning, I couldn't unhear those words. I couldn't unsee that look she gave me when she thought I was out of her life. I texted the stranger again. "Tell me everything." This time, the reply came instantly. "Meet me tonight. 9 p.m. Northside Storage. Unit 306. No explanation. No threats. Just instructions. I should have ignored it. Gone to the cops. Called her out. Demanded answers. But I didn't. Because deep down, I already knew something was broken far beyond fixing. And I needed to know how deep the hole really went. By the time the sun went down, the whole day had turned into a blur of false starts and half-formed plans. I tried to work, but every email looked like static. Tried to eat, but everything tasted like paper. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that photo of Lacey at the bar and the shadow of the man leaning toward her. I also kept replaying that smile she gave the empty street when she thought I was gone. It wasn't the smile of someone cheating. It was the smile of someone freed. At exactly 8:47 p.m., I pulled up outside Northside Storage. The place was a sprawling grid of steel doors and buzzing fluorescent lights, rows stretching off into darkness like a maze designed for people's secrets. My headlights caught a dozen security cameras mounted like black eyes under the eaves. The sign by the office read, "Closed, access for tenants only." I wasn't a tenant, but apparently the stranger was. Unit 306 was at the far end, near the fence where weeds grew through the concrete. The corridor smelled of oil, wet cardboard, and something metallic I couldn't place. The rain had stopped, but the air was heavy, electric, like a storm had just passed, but wasn't done with you yet. I stopped a few doors away and killed the engine. My phone buzzed at 8:59. Come in. Doors unlocked. My stomach lurched. There was no car nearby, no footsteps, no sign of anyone waiting. Just a dull echo of water dripping from a downspout. I walked up to 306. The door was rolled halfway open, lights spilling out from inside. It wasn't bright, more like a single naked bulb swaying gently from a cord. I crouched slightly and peered under the metal lip before ducking inside. It didn't look like any storage unit I'd ever seen. No boxes stacked to the ceiling, no dusty furniture wrapped in plastic. This was a kind of makeshift room. Black folding table, a couple of chairs, a corkboard pinned with photos, receipts, and handwritten notes. In the middle of the table sat an open manila folder stuffed with papers, and next to it, a cheap flip phone buzzing silently. And pinned on the corkboard, dead center, was a photo of me. I froze, mouth open. It wasn't a recent photo either. It was from last winter, me at a gas station, pumping fuel with my head down, not noticing whoever was taking the shot. Around it were smaller printouts. Me at the grocery store, me leaving the hardware shop, me picking up Lacey's dry cleaning. Dozens of me, living my life, completely unaware. A voice came from the back corner. Close the door. I spun around. There was a man standing in the shadow between two metal shelves, tall and gaunt, hoodie zipped up to his throat. I couldn't see his eyes under the brim of his cap. His hands were empty, but something about the way he stood made me think of someone who had been waiting for this moment. "Who the hell are you?" I demanded. My voice cracked like a teenager's. "I told you," he said quietly. "I owe you." "For what?" "For keeping her distracted long enough." I didn't understand. The bulb swayed again, casting his face in alternating light and shadow. He stepped forward and gestured to the table. "Everything you think you know about her is a lie. That's not an affair. That's a cover. She's been moving money, names, and people. I can prove it. But you need to listen before you do something stupid." I felt my knees almost give. "What are you talking about?" He flipped open the manila folder and pushed it toward me. Inside were bank statements, fake IDs, and photographs of Lacey with different hairstyles, different cities, different men. Not just the guy from the bar. 5, 6, 7 of them. All of them looking at her like she was someone else. "I thought she was just cheating," I whispered. He shook his head slowly. "No, she's building an escape. And you, Everett, are her alibi." I couldn't feel my fingers as I flipped through the documents. Each page was heavier than the last, like it was soaked in wet cement. The first bank statement showed a transfer of $19,700 from our joint account to an offshore number I didn't recognize. The date? 3 days before our anniversary dinner. The one she made me pay for on my own because, in her words, things were tight this month. The second sheet was a scan of a driver's license. Lacey's photo, but with the name Marissa Elwood. Another document listed her as Jamie Calderon. A gym membership under Riley Shaw. Each one had a different address, all in different states. All active. "She's been rotating aliases for at least 2 years, the man said calmly, like he was explaining a crossword puzzle. Each ID ties to a new man, a new location, a new bank. She keeps them running long enough to build trust. Then, right before things get serious, she pulls the plug and disappears." My mouth was dry. Why would she do that? For money? "Not just money," he replied. "Access. These men, they're all boring, safe, soft. Like you. No offense." "None taken," I muttered. "They work in insurance, state jobs, IT support, government offices, people with clearance, people with systems access, people nobody notices. She builds relationships, learns logins, passwords, personal habits. It's social engineering, Everett. You weren't a husband. You were a front door." The phrase hit like a punch. A front door. I stepped back from the table, the walls of the unit suddenly pressing in. The man didn't follow. He just watched me carefully, like he expected me to run or throw up, or maybe both. "I don't believe this," I muttered. "Lacey can't even figure out our Roku remote. She triple checks the oven is off before we leave the house. She cries at Subaru commercials. She's exactly who she needs to be, when she needs to be," he cut in. "That's the game. She makes you believe she's helpless, confused, fragile. That's how she gets in. Did you know she used to be engaged to a software architect in Ohio? He was working on federal infrastructure contracts. I blinked. No, neither does he. He still thinks she moved to L.A. for a modeling job. She didn't even tell him it was over. She just vanished, with 3 of his external hard drives and a master login card. I staggered back against the metal wall and slid down until I was sitting on the cold concrete. My brain couldn't hold it all. The woman I thought I married had a trail of invisible corpses behind her. Not dead bodies, maybe, but ruined men, hollowed out and left wondering what the hell happened. I looked up at the corkboard again. My face, my routines, my life dissected like a frog in biology class. You said you owe me, I said finally. Why? The man hesitated, then pulled something from his back pocket and slid it across the floor toward me. A Polaroid photo, crumpled but intact. Lacey, or Marissa, or Jamie, or whoever she was in that moment, standing beside another man I didn't recognize, older, holding hands. Both smiling. She wore the same dress from the Monarch. Same smile. Same eyes. My brother, the man said. She ruined him. Got into his accounts. Made him think they were building a future. He proposed. 3 days later, he was arrested for fraud he didn't commit. He died in prison before we could clear his name. I didn't speak. She's not just running from you, Everett. She's running from what's about to catch her. And then he looked at me differently. Not like a victim, but like a loose end. He stood slowly and walked toward the storage door. You want revenge? He asked. Or truth? Both, I said. Then you've got 48 hours before she vanishes again. She's not staying here. She never does. She's prepping her exit right now, while you sit in a metal box playing catch-up. He paused, one hand on the door. She won't expect you to follow. She thinks you're too broken. Then he left me there, surrounded by folders of lies, empty walls, and a picture of a woman I never really knew. And the worst part? I still missed her. I didn't go back to the car right away. I sat on the freezing floor of that storage unit for what felt like hours, trying to make sense of the pages still spread across the table. My hands were cold, but I didn't feel them. My mind kept spinning, rewinding, replaying every moment, every comment, every half-lie and convenient excuse she'd ever made. They all sounded different now, like they had been dubbed over by someone else. But even then, a part of me wanted to be wrong. I wanted to believe that man had faked everything, that the documents were forgeries, that maybe Lacey was just unfaithful and not some kind of shape-shifting con artist who'd been running plays across state lines. I needed to hear her voice, not on voicemail, not in a photo. I needed to see her eyes when I asked her myself. At 11:33 p.m., I drove back to the house. No plan, no backup, just adrenaline, bitterness, and a sick hope that maybe, just maybe, she'd tell me something I could live with. The lights were still on. Her car was in the driveway. Everything looked normal, like nothing had happened, like the night hadn't cracked the entire foundation of our lives open. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. The living room was warm, cozy even. A candle flickered on the coffee table. Vanilla, her favorite. There was a throw blanket folded neatly on the couch, and the TV was on mute, paused on one of those true crime documentaries she liked to fall asleep to. And there she was, in the kitchen, barefoot, wearing one of my sweatshirts, drinking tea. She didn't even flinch when she saw me. Hey, she said, like I'd just come back from the gas station. You left your phone charger in the bathroom. I stared at her. The silence between us was a pressure chamber. You didn't call, she added, sipping her tea. You okay? That was it. No fear. No panic. No sign she had any idea I'd found out. It was either an Oscar-worthy performance, or she was a sociopath. Where were you last night? I asked. She blinked, slow. I told you. Out with colleagues. The new team lead just got promoted. We went for drinks. The Monarch. She paused just long enough for me to catch it. A flicker of calculation behind her eyes. Yeah, she said. How'd you know that? I didn't answer. Just stared. Let the silence fill the space like poison. She shifted her weight. Everett, what's going on? I took out my phone. Opened the gallery. Scrolled to the picture. Her in the booth. The man with his hand on her leg. I flipped the screen and held it up. Her eyes didn't widen. Her mouth didn't fall open. She didn't gasp. Instead, she gave the smallest smile I've ever seen. You followed me, she said softly. That's not like you. My hands were shaking. What's his name? She walked over slowly and took the mug to the sink. Washed it like we were having a normal Thursday night. dried it with the same towel we'd gotten from her sister last Christmas. Then she turned and leaned against the counter like she was bored. "What did he tell you?" she asked. I didn't reply. "That man, the one who sent you that picture. Did he tell you who he really is?" I froze. "You know him?" "Oh, Everett," she sighed. "He's been following me a lot longer than you think. Since before we met." "You mean your ex's brother?" I shot back. "The one who says you ruined his family?" She tilted her head. "Is that what he told you? You stole from him, framed his brother. You don't know the full story," she interrupted calmly. "He's not some innocent avenger. He's a very sick man who's been obsessed with me for years. His brother was an addict and a fraud before I ever met him. I left because I was scared, because I didn't want to end up being dragged into whatever scam they were cooking. But of course, he needed someone to blame, someone to chase. So he chose me." I stared at her. Everything she said was delivered with perfect calm, her tone soft but urgent, like she was trying to save me from myself. It was the same voice she used when I forgot to pay bills, when I misplaced my keys, when I overreacted to things that weren't worth it. "He's trying to turn you into him," she said. "You think you're unraveling some great betrayal, but all you're doing is feeding his fantasy." It was so smooth, so polished, and I wanted to believe it. God help me, I wanted to believe her. But there was one thing she didn't know. One document I hadn't mentioned. I pulled it from my pocket. A printed invoice for a wire transfer made from our joint account to a numbered shell corporation in the Cayman Islands. Her signature at the bottom. Not forged. Not faked. When she saw it, her expression cracked. Not fear. Not guilt. Annoyance. Like I was an unruly child who had gone through her purse. She exhaled slowly. "You should have waited, Everett." I took a step back. For what? For me to leave cleanly. And in that moment, I knew. Every smile, every kiss, every "I love you" had been part of a script. And I was never the lead. Just the prop. The moment she said it, "You should have waited," something inside me broke free. Whatever pieces of denial were left shattered like cheap glass. The woman I had built my life around, sacrificed for, defended in arguments, cried over in the dark. She wasn't just unfaithful. She wasn't misunderstood. She wasn't trapped. She was in control of everything. And she was annoyed that I had interfered. We stood in silence for several seconds, the air charged like a pulled trigger. Her arms were crossed, not defensive, calculated. She was measuring me now, trying to decide how much I knew, what I'd do next, and if she needed to change tactics. Her eyes flicked toward the stairs, just briefly, and that was enough. "What's up there?" I asked. Her gaze snapped back to me. Too quick. Too alert. "You should leave." I took a step toward the stairs. "I'm not kidding, Everett." Another step. I don't even know what I thought I'd find, but my gut, for once, wasn't lying to me. She suddenly moved between me and the staircase. "If you go up there, you'll regret it." I didn't stop. I brushed past her and started climbing, expecting her to follow, maybe scream, maybe beg. But she didn't move. She just stood at the bottom of the stairs like a statue, watching me with cold, quiet detachment. When I reached the bedroom, everything looked painfully normal. The bed was made. Her side table still had that stupid romance novel she never finished. But something felt off. The floor lamp was pushed slightly to the side, not enough to notice unless you looked closely. I did. Behind it, on the wall, there was a faint outline, almost invisible. A small, square discoloration in the paint. Freshly patched. Slightly uneven. A safe. I couldn't believe it at first. We'd lived in this house for 5 years. She had never once mentioned a safe. I looked around for tools, anything I could use to get in. Found a claw hammer in the hall closet. Went to work peeling the panel loose. My hands were shaking, but I didn't stop. The wall gave way faster than I expected. Behind it was a steel-faced biometric safe, palm-sized, embedded into the studs. No keypad, just a fingerprint scanner. Of course, I stood there, breathing heavily, staring at it. This little hidden vault buried inside my life. And before I could think of what to do next, I heard the creak of the stairs behind me. She was standing in the doorway. "You don't want to open that," she said. "I can't open it," I shot back. "But maybe the police can." She tilted her head and gave a sad little smile. "That's cute. You think they'd believe you. You think anyone would." I stood up, hammer in hand. "Then open it." "Why?" she asked, voice flat. "So you can see what I already decided you're too soft to handle? Try me." She walked in slowly. Calm, composed. No hesitation. She pressed her thumb to the scanner. There was a soft beep. The safe clicked open. Inside were three things. A black notebook with no markings. A thick stack of foreign currency, euros, pesos, and a type of paper I didn't even recognize. A flash drive taped inside a folded envelope labeled, "In case of Everett." I stared at the label. What the hell is this? She didn't answer, just leaned against the dresser and watched me as I pulled the envelope open. Inside was a single printed document, a drafted email to my employer. It claimed I'd accessed internal systems without clearance, funneled small amounts of company funds through dummy invoices, and flagged me for potential identity fraud. Everything was worded perfectly. It even had fake screenshots of transactions I'd supposedly made from my work laptop. My mouth went dry. I flipped through the second page. There was a summary of my schedule, logins, security questions, everything someone would need to impersonate me. I was never going to use it, she said quietly. Not unless I had to. It was insurance. You were going to destroy me. I was going to protect myself, she corrected. You were never supposed to get this far, Everett. You weren't supposed to ask questions. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own wife had created a failsafe against me. She hadn't just planned an escape. She'd written the script for my downfall. And then I noticed the last line on the envelope. To be delivered only if he talks. She saw me read it. It's not personal, she said. I stared at her, numb. You've been building this for years. Of course, she whispered. You don't survive this world being naive. A knock at the front door cut through the tension like a blade. We both froze. Another knock. Louder. Lacey's expression finally cracked. Just for a second. And for the first time since this nightmare began, she looked scared. The knock came again, louder this time. Not frantic. Not angry. Just certain. Lacey took a slow step backward, her eyes flicking between me and the bedroom window, calculating exits like a cornered animal. That cool composure she wore like armor? It cracked at the edges now, showing panic just beneath the surface. Who was that? I asked, but I already knew she wasn't going to answer. She didn't look at me. She turned and bolted down the stairs. I followed, not even thinking. My legs moved before my mind caught up. By the time I reached the bottom step, she had the front door halfway open, but it wasn't who I expected. Not the man from the storage unit. Not the police. It was a woman. Tall. Early 40s. Wearing a navy windbreaker with a leather folder in her hand, and something clipped at her belt that I couldn't quite make out. Her eyes locked on mine. Everett Klein? She asked calmly. Lacey froze. I nodded. Yeah. I'm Agent Dawson, Financial Crimes Division. You need to come with me. Lacey stepped in. You don't have a warrant. Actually, I do. Dawson cut her off, flashing a folded document. And a federal subpoena for every drive, paper, and account linked to this residence, including that safe upstairs. For a second, the world stopped spinning. My ears rang like I was underwater. Wait, how did you? I began, but Dawson raised a hand gently. You did good, she said. We've been circling her for months. But until recently, she was too careful, too clean. Someone, she paused, nodding at me, gave us exactly what we needed. Behind her, a second agent entered the house. Calm, professional, no guns drawn. Not a raid, just a quiet end to a loud storm. Lacey didn't move. Her hands dropped to her sides, and I watched something strange pass through her expression. Not rage, not fear. Just resignation. She turned to me. You always seemed soft, she said. But you're a lot harder to kill than I thought. Dawson stepped in and took her by the wrist. No handcuffs. Just quiet authority. No need for violence. Wait, I said. What happens now? She faces federal charges. Wire fraud. Identity theft. Obstruction. She's not vanishing again, Everett. I stood in the living room while they walked her out into the cool morning air. She didn't look back. By 6 a.m., the house was silent. Empty. I sat alone on the couch, staring at the candle she'd left burning. Vanilla. Still flickering. Like none of it had ever happened. Except it had. And I was still here. Later that week, I turned over everything to the authorities. The notebook, the drive, the envelope. Dawson promised to keep my name off any public filings. She said, you were a victim, and you did the right thing. I moved out the following month. Found a small apartment on the other side of town, closer to the river. No safe in the wall. No secrets under the floorboards. Just me. a few boxes, and silence that didn't feel like punishment anymore. I got a dog, a big, dumb rescue mutt with uneven ears and a habit of stealing socks. I named him Anchor, because this time, I was choosing what held me down. Some nights I still think about her, not with longing, not even with hate, just curiosity, wondering how someone could be that many people in one body and still sleep at night. But then I walk Anchor by the river, watch the light shift on the water, and I remember the most important thing. She told me, "Don't wait up." And for once in my life, I didn't. I let her go, and I kept myself.